أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Just wanted to bring something short to the group. Really moved, motivated by this morning's post-Fajr reflections. Talk with Imam Amin in a nice, strategic way. But with love and concern for us, for his people, as he always moves. May Allah reward him for that and bless his efforts and sustain him and bless all those who are involved in the efforts amongst the other imams and leaders and supporters. Bless those much needed efforts coming from Sheikh Muhammad and all those involved in putting together that class. Because it's much needed, and he showed how during Ramadan is not the time to just be all to yourself and peace, and in your own little so-called aura, But Ramadan was a time where you had Badr, the most famous battle of Islam, in Ramadan. So our striving, to teach, to spread, to inform each other of the proper methodology of Islam that was purposely not given to us should not be something that we discontinue during Ramadan, but something that we should be even more energetic and engaging in during Ramadan, with all the rewards, with it being the month of mercy, the month of the gates of paradise being open, and what that means, the different explanations of what that means as far as the mercy and the facilitation to get the works to get to paradise, and with the hellfire, with the gates being closed, with the explanations of that, it's being harder to get to hell during this month. And so Usuluddin, right, Sheikh Uthman Danfodio, and I'm not nobody really authorized to teach no classes like that, but we have to teach what we know. It's necessary for us to teach what we know, spread what we know to our families, and share with whoever we can. This short book, I believe it's like in the Arabic section, only 5 pages, where he gives enough of the basics of the deen where somebody can memorize this short text, where children will memorize the short text, and you can memorize that text, and you can have a basis of the basic proper belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which has been purposely kept away from us. We have been purposely given misguided Akida, and during this month of Ramadan, it only intensifies where the majority of us are exposed to it more during Ramadan than outside of Ramadan. Many people don't even approach any type of Quran translation or anything of tafsir until Ramadan. So we're reading all these bad translations, explanations. We're reading the noble Quran, and with all these anthropomorphic ascriptions to Allah. We're reading the abridged tafsir Ibn Kathir, with all these anthropomorphic ascriptions to Allah. These bad beliefs, these likening Allah to His creation, are in there. And this during this month of Ramadan, where you have new Muslims coming in for the first time, and they're exposed to these corrupting beliefs that corrupts one's worship. So they're not. Shaitan is not stopping. He has his people in place to carry on even during Ramadan. They're in place for him to carry his mission on. You know, to corrupt the methodology which the Prophet ﷺ had given his companions who pass it on, and which is still the majority methodology of all the Muslims throughout the world. That Ash'ari and Maturidi, those who have the madhabs of in fiqh of Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, and the correct paths of Tasawwuf. For the Shehu of Mandan Fodia gives us a basic understanding of the proper beliefs, the proper Aqidah, the proper creed of Islam that we need to know, which is obligatory on every Muslim who has reached the age of discernment, who has reached the age of puberty. This is what we must know, must teach our children. And I was going over this small section. In the beginning, I went over a short section with my own kids who are only 4 and 5. And it felt good, you know, because eventually they're going to have to learn anyway the creed. And I want them, you know, to make sure that I teach them the proper way early. You know, and hopefully our children, you know, can memorize this book. So he starts off, you know, when you get into this introduction, his own introduction, he starts off in the name of Allah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Sallallahu Alaihi wa Sallallahu Ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sabbihi wa salam tasliman khala al Abdul-Zahir. Name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. May Allah bless our Master Muhammad and upon his family, his companions, and give them such peace. And this translation here is translated by our own Imam Naim Abdullah al-Mashid Mukmin. Yeah, on the back he has his address for his publishing. This is a translated work of the Shehu, and he is one of our teachers who teach the books of the Shehu with unbroken chains, and he also is a representative of one of the sultans in Sudan as far as the Tariqa is concerned. He is an official representative of a particular sultan from the family of Shehu Uthman Danfodio, who immigrated to Sudan. From his family, from his family who immigrated. So after his time, some of his family made the migration to Sudan. He refers to himself as a poor slave, recognizing that with all his status of being a great scholar, he was a mujaddid, one of the revivers of the deen in the 13th century Islam, as he died in 1232 AH. Mujaddid, a mujtahid, a high-ranking scholar in fiqh within the Maliki madhab, somebody who was able to explain in school. So he was more than just a ruler, a warrior. He was a high-ranking scholar in fiqh, a mujtahid within the madhab of Imam Malik, and he has books in fiqh. Some of those we are going over. One in particular was Imam Naim Abdullah, one of those books. So he's also a high-ranking scholar of Tasawwuf, combining the inner and the outer. You know. And he's humbled himself, refers to himself as being in need of Allah, where Allah is Al-Ghani for all his status that he had, all his favors that Allah gave him and his empire and his scholarship, he started off his tech recognizing that he's in need of Allah for everything, that Allah is al-Ghani, that Allah is free of need, but we are in need of Allah for everything. And that's how he starts. And he mentions himself as the son of the scholar. And he begins with praises on Allah, the Lord of the worlds. This book, he starts off recognizing that everything is from Allah. Everything we get is from Allah. That is not from his own efforts, but through the generosity of Allah. That he's in need of Allah. You know, we hear in Imam Amin's class where he's talk about those who will fall short, those who fall short, those who that is not falling short. For somebody who is really falling short, somebody who really has some serious issues, some serious sins, to admit that they're falling short when we know they're falling short. But when somebody who has a status, has a rank, a high rank with Allah, those who admit that they consider themselves falling short, that's what's highlighted. That's what's being talked about as far as falling short. Where they recognize, even with their high status, that it's all from Allah. That is all due to him and not due to their own efforts. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that none of us will enter paradise except through his mercy, and not even himself. All from the generosity and favor of Allah, which is abundant on us during this month of Ramadan. And this book, the foundations of the deen, the roots of the deen. What we must know. Our success depends on a solid foundation. You can't build a house without a solid foundation. And that's what it's given us here, to learn some of the basic things we know about Allah that is necessary for us to know, those which are impossible for us to ascribe to Allah, and those which are possible for to ascribe to Allah. You know, where it's necessary for us to believe that Allah is not like his creation in any way. It's necessary for us to know that Allah is totally independent, not in need of his creation. So these are just some of the basics here. Just wanted to give a short, take advantage of this opportunity during Ramadan, as I said, being sparked by Imam from this morning. This is a huge reward. It's a huge blessing that we need. We recognize that we're those poor slaves. Those of high status like Shaykh Uthman Danfodi recognize their need, for the mercy of Allah. Somebody who you talk about one of his saintly miracles, that he can detect the sins on people, that he can smell the sins. The high degree of being close to Allah, that he still recognizes his need for Allah. So what about us? So we need whatever we can get, and there's much reward in being for the cause of Allah. And if we try to just convince one person during this month about the proper beliefs in Allah, the proper Islamic creed, and that's a big reward, especially during this month, where this month is a big month of rewards and sacrifice, where the fasting is such highlighted. Is that Allah gives the reward. It's a big deal just to give pieces of advice, and if we can get one person to, by Allah's generosity, by Allah's favor, to come to the correct creed, then that would be sufficient for us. It might be enough to turn the tide in our favor in our own lives, to get us over some humps that we have, some battles that we have where we need Allah's mercy and favor. You never know. So I would just end with, this was somebody who emphasized me. We talk about this, especially with Sufi sheikhs and stuff, where they didn't always give us, they didn't give it the masters of us, the correct creed. They tried to give us the soul, but they didn't give us the correct creed. Somebody like this, they're starting off with the basics, with the correct creed, You don't get to the soul without the correct creed. You don't get to the soul without the correct creed, and then the correct application of the Sharia. But then you don't get to the soul without the correct creed. And we saw that our tasawwuf was corrupted. We were given tasawwuf without the correct creed. Where people had a lot of bad beliefs about Allah. This uncreated worlds and stuff that is totally off. Allah is the only one that doesn't have a beginning. Allah, everything else is a creation. Everything else is created. And Allah is as He was before He created creation. He doesn't change. We don't ascribe direction to Allah. We don't ascribe location. It's not in a place. We don't ascribe bodies. We don't ascribe limits to Allah. There's no how. He created everything. You can't imagine anything that we imagine about Allah. He's other than that. So I appreciate anybody that's going to listen if they can, if anything, can explain better to me to be inspired to teach somebody the correct creed during this month, and not just because it's Ramadan and it's wrong to talk about it. And somebody that's more learned and more better speaker that can teach this, teach the correct beliefs to somebody. So I pray that all our fasts are accepted and our efforts are accepted, and that we get the reward of spreading the correct creed and the correct methodology during this month, and this be our best Ramadan ever, and be one that really breaks through the barriers and allow us to be granted the openings from Allah to make our path smooth and be a path to felicity and far from the fire, and for our families to get the reward and sharing that blessing and be saved from the fire and have the path smooth to felicity, path smooth to Allah's Jannah and His favor. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.